The Engineer. The Inventor. This is Vauban, the Engineer Warframe. Vauban specializes in AoEs and crowd control, and controls the battlefield to his delight. Vauban's passive causes him to deal 25% more damage to enemies that are incapacitated by his abilities. Considering how many of his abilities focus on ragdolling, staggering, and knocking down his enemies, this essentially means that any enemy under his ability's effects are going to be taking that enhanced damage, which is very nice to have. Tesla Nervos causes Vauban to throw out up to 4 mini rolling drones that follow him and seek out enemies within range. Once the Nervos drones detect an enemy, they attach themselves to them and begin to damage them with electric damage. The damage from the Nervos keeps an enemy stunned and periodically zaps nearby enemies, additionally stunning them for a short duration. It's fairly useful for dealing electric statuses and keeping small groups of enemies stunned, but not as useful as a damage-dealing power. However, since this ability's main effect is keeping small groups of enemies from acting, it can be a very useful way to utilize Vauban's passive. Mind Layer is an ability with 4 different effects, being able to be cycled by tapping the ability button. Holding down the ability button will activate the chosen effect of the ability. Tether Coil throws down a mine that grapples nearby enemies. Grappled enemies are pulled near the mine's origin and knocked prone. These tethers can be deployed on any surface, ground, wall, or ceiling, allowing you to suspend them in the air or force them into the ground for other party members' abilities. It can also be deployed on Warframes and enemies, sticking groups of enemies together. Flechette Orb allows Vauban to throw down a device that spins rapidly and shoots out spikes that deal puncture damage to enemies within range. Vauban can deploy up to 4 Flechette Orbs at any time, allowing him to control multiple areas, or deal rapid damage in one spot. Vector Pad deploys a pad that shoots any entity that walks on it in the direction that it's pointing. It's one of the less useful effects of his abilities, but can be useful for limiting the amount of enemies approaching an area, such as a defense target. It does affect players as well as enemies, so be aware of that. The last effect of Mind Layer is Overdriver. Overdriver grants a damage bonus to weapons used by the ally that is under its effects. This effect does apply to Flechette Orb, as well as the Tesla Nervos, and Vauban can deploy up to 4 of them at once. Mind Layer helps to control the areas that Vauban wants to defend, but clearly some effects are more useful than others. However, I recommend utilizing some effects in combination with others. For instance, using the tethers with Flechette Orbs can cause the Flechette Orbs to hit multiple enemies that are stunned very quickly and pull enemies into the area of Flechette Orb. Photon Strike throws down a beacon at a targeted area. This area will then be shot by a gosh darn orbital strike, dealing large amounts of blast damage in an area. Enemies caught in the blast are ragdolled and blasted away. Along with Flechette Orb, Photon Strike is Vauban's main way of dealing damage. It can be very useful. However, since it hits a specific area, it's encouraged that you use it on large groups of enemies, or one very strong enemy that you need to deal with quickly. Bastille throws down a device that creates a ring that lifts enemies within its radius into the air, making them prone and holding them in place. Enemies suspended in the air are unable to act. Enemies within Bastille's effect lose armor for the duration. Standing within Bastille's effect will grant Vauban that armor that is stolen from enemies, increasing his own defenses. After a few seconds, the ring will collapse into a vortex that draws enemies into the area to the center, ragdolling them and dealing magnetic damage. Beacons from Photon Strike are thrown into the vortex as well, detonating at its center, making it very easy to hit those enemies stuck within the vortex. If you want to skip the ring suspension and go straight to the vortex, simply hold the ability to throw down a vortex itself. Holding down the ability will also activate any Bastilles into their vortex forms. There doesn't seem to be a limit to the amount of Bastilles that Vauban can throw down, limited only by his energy and the duration of the ability. Meaning, as long as he has enough energy, he can effectively turn the entire area into one massive trap for enemies, as long as those enemies don't have Overguard. At rank 30, Vauban has 370 HP, 280 shields, 160 armor, and 225 energy. He has a Naramon Aura slot, along with 1 Naramon and 1 Madurai Polarity. Vauban Prime has an additional 110 shields, 50 more armor, and an additional Vazarin Polarity. Vauban's main blueprint can be purchased for 25,000 credits on the market, and his other blueprints can be purchased from the Nightwave for 25 creds each. Now let's see what Vauban can do one last time. Creative problems require creative solutions, Tenno.